Welcome to the Ljubljana Podcast, the place to come for travel and food tips, cultural highlights, insider stories, and chats with locals. It's everything you need to know about Slovenia's beloved capital city. I'm your host, Slovenia's Ambassador of Tourism, Noah Charney. Let's fire it up. What was it like to be an athlete representing Slovenia at the 2026 Winter Olympics? Like the rest of us, I watched the games on TV and cheered for our heroes. But I was curious what life was like for them behind the scenes. Thankfully, one of those heroes is joining us for this special episode of the Ljubljana Podcast. Lila Lapanja is an alpine ski racer whose career spans two ski worlds, the United States, where she grew up and developed as an athlete, and Slovenia, the country she now represents internationally. Raised in the American system, she built her reputation as a technical skier specializing in slalom. Along the way, she earned U.S. national titles, podium finishes on the Nor-Am circuit, and opportunities to start in World Cup races while competing for Team USA. The Nor-Am Cup serves as the main stepping stone below the World Cup in North America, where strong performances help athletes with their race quotas, FIS points, and move them towards national team selection. In 2024, Lapanja made the decision to change national representation and begin racing for Slovenia, reconnecting with her family heritage and joining a country known for producing world-class technical skiers. Since the switch, she has competed across both the World Cup and the European Cup circuits, continuing to build results in some of the deepest international fields in alpine skiing. Her progress through the 2025 season included standout performances with a sixth-place finish in the slalom at the European Cup race in Meyerhofen, an important step as she pushed to qualify for the Olympic Games. That effort paid off. Lapanja represented Slovenia at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milano-Cortina, where she finished 36th in the women's slalom. Lila appeared in an episode of another podcast I host, Feel Slovenia, which focused on winter sports in general and was recorded before the Olympics. But for this episode, we did a longer, more in-depth interview after the Olympics. So what was it like to be an athlete there, representing Slovenia at the Winter Olympics? Let's find out. I'm often asked where I recommend staying in Ljubljana. My answer is easy: Hotel Mrak. Hotel Mrak is my home away from home in Slovenia's capital. It's a family-run, elegant boutique hotel with a perfect location, right in the pedestrian-friendly heart of the city. You can easily walk anywhere from Hotel Mrak. Like me, it's got an artsy vibe, and it also has an epically good breakfast that is worth a journey. Take a look for yourself at hotelmrak.si. That's hotelmrak.si. Lila, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us, and welcome back from the Olympics.
Thank you, Noah. I'm excited to be talking to you.
Okay, I have so many questions because you're the first Olympian that I've interviewed. But first, for people who haven't followed your story as closely as they should, can you give us a little summary of how you came from the US with a Slovenian father and then wound up representing Slovenia at the Olympics just recently?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in the United States, and growing up, I ski raced in the United States and raced for the US ski team. And then a few years ago, I decided to switch nationalities and race for my father's home country of Slovenia. I also grew up coming to Slovenia as a kid and spent a lot of my summer vacations here with my grandma and grandpa. So I have a deep love and respect for this country. So it felt like a natural move for me to make in my career. And it's been the best decision so far that I could have made.
So leading up to the Olympics, you actually had to compete for a spot. Is that right? What's the process like, and how many, is it accruing a certain number of points and races ahead of time?
There's always objective criteria for the Olympic spots, and then there's subjective criteria. So what we would call coach's discretion. And there's a board that will ultimately decide who they'll take to the Olympic Games. How our sport works is our sport consists of different disciplines: slalom, giant slalom, super giant slalom, and downhill, and a team event. And I was only racing in the slalom event. And within each event, each nation can take up to 4 people, depending on these things called quota spots and their world ranking. And there's lots of layers to it. But Slovenia had 4 spots available for the slalom team. So essentially, I was competing for one of those 4 spots. And so, what the coaches and what the committee is looking for are the results. Are you showing a trend in a positive competitive direction? How are you head to head with the other athletes on the team? And there's so first they're hoping that you're going to make objective criteria, which unfortunately I didn't make objective criteria. I was injured at the beginning of the year with a back injury, and so I had a kind of a late start, and my performances weren't quite at that level. But luckily, they were looking at some other factors, and at the end of the qualification period, which ran until January, they decided they wanted to fill all 4 spots for the Olympic slalom team. And so I received one of those spots. I don't know in which order they chose. That wasn't disclosed, but at the end of the day, it looked like I did do enough to make the Olympic team. And they're always looking at results leading up to the Olympics, but they're also looking at your past results and stuff like that. So I did enough to make the team, and that was as far as it went for making the Olympic team. I was grateful, and I got a little bit lucky, and then it was unfortunate because a couple other athletes early in the season did get injured. So there were spots open for competition, but that is the nature of our sport. Some people have the best year of their life going into the Olympics and they're peaking right on time. Others get hurt and they can't compete. I knew a couple athletes that got hurt literally a week before they started their competition started, and so they couldn't go. So it's kind of a brutal, stressful, intense, dramatic process.
How do you deal with that psychologically, or is it just a roller coaster inevitably?
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. I think just being aware that it's going to be a roller coaster and that you're going to feel a lot of different emotions and that they can fluctuate frequently makes it a little bit easier to manage. I've also been racing for a long time, so I'm, if you want to call it, maybe have a little bit more wisdom to the nature of those emotions and those intensities. But that said, they're still really challenging to deal with psychologically, and you still get physiologically affected by them. You see a lot of athletes get injured during the Olympic season. You see a lot of athletes get sick during the Olympic season. Those are not coincidences whatsoever.
So, when you got the news that you were going to the Olympics, did anything different take place in your preparations from when you're in the normal World Cup circuit? Or do you think of it just like another, a World Cup event?
Surprisingly, not much changed. And a lot of that was based off of how these Olympics were run in Cortina, because we weren't traveling to some crazy foreign nation where there was one Olympic village and we were all in one place in one cluster. We had a lot of freedom to move in and out of Cortina. So I actually went to the opening ceremonies in Cortina and then left the Olympic Village and continued my training, went to some other races, and then came back into the village a couple days before my event, and then raced and then went home. So it was really a quite different experience than what I was imagining the Olympics as and what probably people at home imagine the Olympic experience to be like. So for me, it felt a lot more like another World Cup, which was good and bad. Sometimes it's fun when things feel a little bit different than the actual routine. But my actual preparation from a skiing standpoint was pretty normal. I didn't feel like anything was extraordinary.
That is quite different, but that was because you live nearby relatively, or did lots of athletes from, let's say, Southern Europe also have a similar experience of coming and going over the course of the Olympics?
For I think our sport, particularly alpine skiing in Cortina, we all had a similar experience of coming and going. The other sports, such as bobsled and curling, where their events take place over the course of a longer period of time, I think they came and stationed. But for ski racing, I know I wasn't alone in that process. And the speed events took place earlier. So then once those events were done, all of those women went home. Nobody stayed to watch our events, and we weren't there earlier to watch their events. So we were all kind of disjointed and we actually didn't cross over a lot. So every country and athlete had quite an independent strategy and plan going during these Olympic Games because of the location of these Olympics and how close they were to other training and racing venues during that time period.
What are you doing this Friday? Because if you're anywhere near Ljubljana, there's only one right answer. Otprta kuchna, open kitchen. Every Friday from late morning until late in the evening, Pogačar Square transforms into the tastiest place in town. Over 20,000 food lovers gather to sample sizzling street food from Slovenia's best chefs, sip craft cocktails and local wines, and dance their way into the weekend under the open sky. From Korean barbecue to Balkan classics, vegan delights to wood-fired pizza, it's a global street food party Slovenian style. It's been featured in The Guardian and beyond as a unique food fest where social life meets eats. Come hungry, come curious, and bring your friends. Otprta kuchna, Fridays June through October at Pogačarjev Trg, Pogačar Square, where Ljubljana goes to eat, drink, and celebrate. So behind the scenes a little bit, what was the Olympic Village like your accommodations? We read about in the papers about how good the food was. And I was just curious what your experience was like.
Is that sarcasm?
No. It was supposedly really good. There was like a New York Times article about this crazy good lasagna, and I don't know. So, but I'm not sure if everyone had the same experience. By the face you're making, I'm guessing that you didn't have exactly the same experience.
Yeah, I'll give you a behind the scenes look. So I can only speak for Cortina because how these Olympics worked is they had the Milano, they call them clusters, the Milano cluster, Predazzo, Anterselva, Cortina, Bormio. So there were five different clusters of athletes competing in different regions in Italy. So my experience was probably vastly different than someone in Predazzo or Livigno or Bormio or Milano. I would imagine they placed a lot of focus. Maybe the food was really good in Milano for the Olympic Village there, because that would have been the main village location. Our village was actually a temporary town setup where we had temporary structures built. It definitely looked all very, very temporary, but it was also very comfortable. We were all in boxes, but the beds were comfortable. We had running water. We had a giant food hall, and I do have to say the food was mediocre at best. It just felt like buffet food that sits there for several hours because just by the nature of they basically had a 24/7 kitchen, so athletes could come and go whenever they needed to, which is great. And they had a huge variety of food, so you had everything from seafood to meats, cheeses, cuisines from around the world, breakfast food for dinner. You had kind of everything, but that everything came a little bit with a cost of it sat there for a long time. And so I wasn't super enthusiastic about the food situation. As far as the actual village, they did a good job in Cortina setting it up for little areas where the athletes could lounge. They had a couple events that would happen on specific nights where athletes could get together, for example, like doing a foosball night or a karaoke night. There was a cool little machine where you could take a picture of yourself and they'd laser your face on a Coca-Cola can. And we all got kind of obsessed with that to the point where they had to close it down because we were all asking for too many Coca-Cola cans. And there was a really nice gym space. You just had to time it right because it could get busy with all the athletes in there. But the gym facility was fantastic. And other than that, it was just like a pop-up city. After the Paralympics, I think they're going to tear it down. So it was very temporary structures, but you can tell that they did the best they could to give the athletes that were there as close to an experience as possible.
What's the social dynamic like between athletes from different countries, different sports, or do you stick mostly with your own team?
I would have liked to socialize with other countries and sports more. I think that's probably what I was missing most from a village standpoint is it didn't feel always appropriate to go sit with another team in the food hall and just start talking to them randomly. I'm normally a very social person. I did find myself being quite shy in those settings, but no other athletes were really commingling. I knew a lot of the ski racers that were there, and so we kind of had this shared experience, kind of like the head nod, like, yeah, I know I know what it took for you to get here. You know what it took for me to get here. Like we have this shared understanding of being in the village together. And that was kind of a fun, empowering experience that or memory that we'll have together as well. So I did my best to mingle a little bit. I did trade a few pins, which I forgot that that was a thing at the Olympics, the pin trading game.
I haven't heard about this. Can you explain?
Yeah, it's a big thing. So at the Olympic Games, every nation and Slovenia included, I got an envelope of about 15 to 20 Olympic Slovenia pins. And what you do is your goal is to trade your pins for other nations' pins. So every nation gets a certain amount of pins, and so you're walking around looking for different pin trades, and you kind of feel like a drug dealer. You're like, "Hey, got any pins?" So yeah, I got a Slovenia pin. Want to check out my pin? And so I traded all of my pins almost immediately, and then I started like begging for pins at the end because I didn't have that many. But I did some cool pin trades. Like I talked to some athletes at opening ceremonies and traded pins then, and a few others. And then at closing ceremonies, I got a couple cool pins like from Mongolia and Haiti, and you try to get the pins that you're interested in. Ironically enough, I didn't get any US pins until like the very last moment. I got a US freestyle pin. But yeah, the pin trading game is like a big thing for the athletes. It's a way to remember the games and share with other countries. And it's a good, if you want it to be, it can be a good conversation starter, or if you have the courage to just go up to a random athlete from a different sport and be like, hey, you got any pins to trade? So it's a little bit of an icebreaker too, the pin trading.
And that's been around for many Olympics, is that right?
I believe so. Yeah, this was my first Olympic Games. I had tried to qualify with the United States as well for the previous two Olympic Games, but this was my first one. But I do remember other athletes talking about pins, but then I had totally forgotten about it. It's kind of like I had forgotten about the culture of like getting a tattoo, like an honorary Olympic Games tattoo after the Olympics. So my favorite pin though was I had a moment at opening ceremonies where Snoop Dogg was in Cortina.
Ah, yes, I remember seeing this.
Yeah, and so Snoop Dogg was in Cortina, and I was along the railing, and he walked to the United States team. And Slovenia and USA are relatively close together in the order. So as he was coming back, one of his agents was walking along the guardrail, and she was giving out Snoop pins.
Nice.
So I got a Snoop Dogg pin, and then he walked right by me, and I asked for a selfie. So I got a Snoop Dogg pin and a selfie with Snoop Dogg. That was like as close to fame as I've probably ever gotten. So it was pretty.
That's almost as good as a medal. Come on, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, and that was the fun thing. I wish I could send you a picture of my credential because everyone would have their pins on the credential. And I sent it home with my mom so it would safely make it back to the United States because I'm going to be traveling in Europe for another month. But she hung it with all of my other childhood medals at home in the States. And it kind of looks like, my gold medal in a way, having my Olympic Games credential with all of the pins from all these different nations and kind of showcases the collective spirit of the Olympic Games in a way.
This is some of the social element behind the scenes. What about preparing for your actual race? There's a psychological side and the physical side. Did it differ from other races, or you mentioned that the vibe was more like a World Cup race? And maybe just walk us through what you're doing just before the race to prepare physically and mentally.
Yeah, this race was a little bit different from my typical routine. I had a roommate for the first time in a long time. Like in previous World Cups, I would usually have my own room, and that came with its own privacy. So I'd have like my own private routines that I would do. But I had a roommate for the Olympic Games. So I had to change my routines just a little bit to be like respectful of the space because we were in these tiny boxes. So we didn't have really any space. So that changed my routine a little bit just from a preparation standpoint of what I usually do. But that's part of the game. Like I knew that going in, and you have to adapt as an athlete to the conditions that you have available. And then on the race day, I did pretty much everything the same as I do for World Cups. Although there was a slightly more intense emotion associated with being at the Olympics. I remember being both like really, really nervous and also just in honor and in awe of the opportunity. So it was a lot to manage. I actually, when we were doing our warm up runs, before our race run, we get a chance to do warm up runs on a different slope where we hit gates to just get our bodies going and get activated and ski through a course that is nothing like the race course, but at least it's a slalom course where we can try to wake up our nervous system and our bodies. But I remember doing my warm up runs and I started crying after because I was just so it was a good cry, but it was just showing like how much emotion was behind trying to prepare for the biggest moment of your life. And so my preparation felt relatively the same. And World Cups, sometimes I can have a hit or miss preparation at World Cups. Like sometimes I'm really in the game and my body feels really ready. For Cortina, I felt like I was slightly off, so I had to compensate for that a little bit, and still, of course, gave my best effort that I had on the day. But felt like you can call it an underperformance or you can call it like a slight off day, but it was difficult to manage the time and the emotions on race day. There's a lot of time in between. So like when we inspect the course, we all get to have one inspection run of the race course. And then I had a really high bib, so I had to wait quite a while before my actual race run. And so that's like at any
A
race.
high bib means that your start number was high, so you had to wait for a lot of
Yes,
people to go first.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a bib and I think I had bib 52. So that just is a lot of time to manage both your psychological preparation and your physical preparation. And it's like you don't want to think about it, but you also don't want to take your head out of the game completely. So you're kind of like in this middle edgy zone where you're just trying to keep yourself together because then you realize you're going to do your race run and it's going to be over in under a minute.
During that time, what are you actually doing? Do you watch the other races? Are you listening to music, or what are you doing for that time?
I do a combination of things. I will usually watch the first couple racers that go down. I don't typically watch all of the racers leading up to when I have to go for my run because then I feel like I'm more of a spectator than a competitor in the race. Just for me personally, it's a psych thing. So then I'll watch a couple racers, and then if it's available, I'll socialize a little bit. Like I'll talk to other athletes if they're relaxed or cool or they want to talk. I try not to force myself into any specific bubble or corner. It's very fluid. I've done so many different things throughout the years. I also like to listen to music. I listen to music a lot, actually, before those races, and tried to just find playlists and songs that connected me with the joy of ski racing and like some of the music I listened to growing up before races, and just tried to keep myself in a really positive space.
Okay, so you say you weren't super happy with your run, and I can understand that. But from a normal human's perspective, it's a difference is like so little that we can't even conceive of it. It's like a second or less in many cases, right?
Sometimes, yeah. I've won races by 1/100th of a second before.
Wow.
Yeah, the differences can be really small. For I think in particular for the Olympics, I mean anything under like 5, 10 seconds. I mean, we're still talking seconds, right? We're not talking minutes. So it's crazy no matter which way you put it. But yeah, for a medal position, I would have kind of needed to stay within a second, and I was over. So from like a actual athlete standpoint, like for sure the performance could be better, but then if you look at it from a general standpoint, like 10 seconds of your life in 90 seconds of racing is just it's crazy in itself. And so you have to appreciate the journey and the competition for what it is in the bigger picture as well.
That's also strikes me because it's so much pressure on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I ended up 36. I think I ended up 36th overall. So it wasn't a bad result by any means, but it does put a lot of pressure on like a short amount of time. And I often tell people who don't know much about ski racing, like we work so many days and hours and months and years, and it comes down to less than 2 minutes of competition. So, yeah, it's no pressure. You can tell yourself that all day long, but it's still inherently like it's a race, it's competition, and it comes down to like a singularity. And you sometimes are in the pocket and in your sweet spot when that moment comes, and sometimes you're out of it and you just do everything you can to get yourself as close as you can to being in it. It's a wild experience at this rate. This sport is pretty crazy.
The pressure seems so much on such a, as you say, on like this pinpoint of time. If you go to a tournament where you're playing, I don't know, like the World Cup in soccer, then you're playing multiple matches of 90 minutes each, and it feels like, okay, there's there's some room for error, and you can grow into it. But here you just have to be totally on for this less than 2 minute run. It's amazing to me. So I'm very impressed with anyone who can survive that and smile about it and laugh about it. Is really hats off.
Thank you. Yeah, I did not choose an easy sport, or I guess an easy sport did not choose me, but we're in this together, and so we're going all the way together, and we went all the way together to the Olympic Games. So that in itself, that was a huge life goal and accomplishment of mine career-wise.
You also got to carry the flag in the last parade. Tell me about that closing ceremony.
The closing ceremony was the most magical part of my Olympic experience. I told the Slovenian Olympic Committee that I wanted to go to Verona, Italy, to the closing ceremonies, which happened in the Roman arena in Verona, which if people haven't been, highly recommend experiencing that and seeing that. And it was logistically tough to get there, like the rest of the games. I had already been home in Slovenia, and it was another 3-hour drive back into Italy and to go. But I rallied because I knew it was really important for me to honor and represent Slovenia at both the opening and closing ceremonies, and for myself as an athlete, and to just honor and represent the games as well. So I made it happen. I told the committee that I was going, and they said, we would like to give you the honor of carrying the Slovenian flag at the closing ceremonies. So it was, again, a very emotional, profound moment for me to, like, if you would have told me 2 years ago that this is where I would have ended up, I probably wouldn't have believed you. There's just so many things that have to happen to reach a moment like that in life. And I will say, walking into the stadium, like this ancient Roman stadium, felt kind of like a gladiator tris, like carrying my country's flag. And there was just so much pride and honor to be a part of a legacy that's gone back to like the ancient Greeks, and just you feel kind of this Olympic spirit of athletes that have walked before you, and almost athletes that are going to walk after you. You're part of this chain, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a really special feeling to be there. And closing ceremonies, it offers a little bit of closure to the whole experience. So they were really magical to me. The performances were beautiful. Italy did a fantastic job. And yeah, I got to represent Slovenia, which I think as a little girl, when I would come here, I always dreamed of representing Slovenia at the Olympic Games in a way that I couldn't even really articulate. So it was a really quite magical moment in my life.
That's beautiful. And I think that's a good note to end on. I want to thank you for spending some time telling us about what it's like behind the scenes. It's very cool that you're someone who bridges America and Slovenia in one person, and that you represented Slovenia in the Olympics. It's very special. So thank you for representing our country, and thank you for sharing your time and thoughts with us.
My pleasure, Noah. I love talking with you and talking to a fellow Slovenian enthusiast who also is American. And yeah, it's a wonderful country, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I really do feel the love here, and it was very special. So thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Ljubljana Podcast. The Ljubljana Podcast is brought to you by Odprta Kuhna, the food festival that rocks Ljubljana's central market every Friday, all day and night from June through October. It's also brought to you by Hotel Mrak, my favorite hotel in Ljubljana, a boutique, artsy, family-run spot in the heart of the city, with a world-class breakfast and featuring my guided video tours of Ljubljana, available to all guests. This podcast is produced by Urshka Chani and hosted by Noah Chani. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.